Welcome back. I'm Vince Perryman, and you are watching Legalese. Joining us on our show is Bill Jones of the Jones Law Firm, as well as Angela Lawson of the law offices of J. Vincent Perryman. We are discussing common mistakes made by clients. Before the break, we had started to get into, where you've got a $700 collection case for a business, and really they don't have an attorney's fee clause or anything like that, or a real contract, and how that's problematic. And I think one mistake that a lot of small business owners make is thinking, okay, well, I've got a small margin of profit, I shouldn't pay an attorney to do contracts for me or look at my invoices.
Yeah.
Whereas, that can be a major thing, that if you do that on the front end, it's a cost saving on the back end.
What you're talking about is the situation where mom and dad decide they want to start up a part-time business. They go online and Google a contract for this service, and then things go awry, and they come into you, and you say, okay, we can do it for you. It's going to cost you $500. And they look at you and say, well, it's only a lawsuit for $700. And you go, okay, well, let me see the contract you downloaded from Google. And you look at it, and there's this magical provision that's missing. And if they would have just come in and hired you to draft it on the front end, it would be a completely different matter. Because our law in Tennessee says if there is a provision in that contract that says if you default on this agreement, you will pay us to sue you. I mean, credit card companies are great at putting it in everything they do. And as a small business owner, if you don't take the time to pay an attorney to do that, you're really doing a disservice to your small business.
Well, and I think the other thing with that is our firm does this, and I know there's some other firms that do this, where we'll basically serve as in-house counsel for these small companies for a very small monthly fee. And that way you've got somebody that if you've got the issue, you can call them up, ask them that quick question. It's probably a 0.1 on that question. And, realistically, what have you just paid that attorney? Well, if it's a $250 an hour attorney, you've only paid him $25, but you've got the question answered and you're moving in the right direction.
And you get to write it off. Do you get to write it off?
I mean, it's a business expense on that, and that's the other thing with a lot of the businesses, not seeing the forest for the trees with this. Because I give a lecture to a lot of business groups about where I compare, doing business as the business road, and your attorney, your CPA, your other advisors are your road crew as you're going through a jungle or a forest, and they're smoothing that road to keep your vehicle out of the ditch.
Yep.
And that's the other thing with this on businesses. We get a lot of folks that have gone to LegalZoom.com, and sometimes that works out fine, but in other instances
it doesn't.
It doesn't. And
those forms that you're downloading offline are created. They're created to be used in all 50 states, and because of that, there are some very specific things that need to be done in each state, and if they're missing, they're no good. In our divorce practice, we see folks come in that have gone online and they have just made a mess because they downloaded some forms. They thought, okay, it's this easy, and they have really just they've probably doubled what they're going to have to pay because they've made such a mess, because these forms are not state specific no matter what the links say.
And I would say, with the, it's Nolo.com is another one of these. They actually have a service where they've got some attorneys that are local and whatnot that will look over the documents before you finalize them, which I think that's a good alternative if you want a starting point, and maybe it keeps it down a little bit, but on some incorporation documents, I've seen nonprofits done that way, and it's not even going to get its 501c3 status.
Well, I'm thrifty. I'm a shopper, but there is a time to be thrifty, but you think about, as a client, you think about the anxiety and the apprehension that you had when you first picked up the phone and called an attorney, much less when you actually got there and you had to walk through the door. If you're going through that and it's that big of a life event, it is not the time to be thrifty. It is not the time to say, I'll go to Google and get a form.
You know, and Angela, I think you can speak to this too, as far as a lot of people that we run into in the public, they're antsy about going to an attorney because they don't understand how that process works.
Right. A lot of people see coming to an attorney as going to court and having this big lawsuit, when a lot of times coming to an attorney can prevent some of those things, you know, just by going and asking the right questions and having, you know, your documents examined properly and things like that. So.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is people, I mean, attorneys have we have this reputation as sharks for whatever reason out there, and that we're all slimy and we're evil or whatever, you know, which isn't really the case. You haven't heard that? Oh, well, I mean, lucky you. You know, and it's one of those that it's perpetuated through the jokes and all this stuff, and that's fine, they're funny. But the reality of it is an attorney should be viewed as a trusted advisor, someone that you go into that, sure, there's a lot of education there, but they're not a scary person. And you go in, you talk to them, and you get some sort of result, and it shouldn't be something that's just somebody's really scared of doing.
There was a point in time when every attorney not only wrote attorney at law, they also wrote attorney and counselor at law. And I think it's the fall away from that mindset that has encouraged a lot of that ill will or that thought process. The other thing is well, it's another mistake that I think we should talk about, that I think has propagated that type of thought process about attorneys.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of these that it's just the whole idea of being afraid to go get help is a strange concept to me.
Well, at the same time, I think what has helped push that stereotype forward is folks getting an attorney outside of what they can really afford. I think that's how that reputation has come about. If you go in and you hire an attorney, you need to have a frank discussion with them about fees, because I promise you, if you hire an attorney and he says this is going to cost you $5,000, and you know you've got $2,500 in your bank account, but you still hire him, how it is going to end is with the attorney quitting and you going away and saying he is a horrible attorney and he does this and he does this. If, however, you have a frank discussion with the attorney up front and you know, all right, this is going to cost me $1,000, I've got $1,000, let's go, you're going to have a pleasant experience.
Right. And Bill, I hate to cut you off, but we need to take a break. So when we return, we'll talk more with our panel about common mistakes made by clients. Please stay with us.